Video number 240, multiplying with negative numbers. Here are the four situations and how we shall describe them. The first two are pretty basic. 3 times 4 means to add 3 rows of positive 4, and 3 times negative 4 means to add 3 rows of negative 4. We could easily see why this is 12 and why this is negative 12. Here's where these two come in, a little bit trickier. Let's take a look. It says remove 3 rows of positive 4 is negative 3 times 4, and then negative 3 times negative 4 means to remove 3 rows of negative 4. Let's take a look. 3 times 4, add 3 rows of positive 4, we get our 12. And then, of course, 3 times negative 4, add 3 rows of negative 4. Therefore, we're adding 3 rows of 4 negative symbols, or in other words, electrons. So therefore, negative 12 is the charge. Negative 3 times 4, remove 3 rows of positive 4. So the first thing we're going to do is start off with 0. I hope that's comfortable for you, because that's the way we're going to teach why this negative times a positive is in fact negative. We're going to remove 3 rows of positive 4. So we start off with the 12. If you take the positives away, you're left with negatives, therefore negative 12. Then, of course, negative 3 times negative 4, you're going to remove 3 rows of negative 4. So you're going to start off with a 0. Then we're going to remove the 3 rows of negatives, so take the negatives away, and you're left with 3 rows of positive 4. So therefore, you're left with positive 12. Here's a list of problems we're going to work out here. We got negative 4 times negative 10, negative 2 times negative 5 times negative 7, and we have one with fractions. We have negative 3 quantity squared and minus 3 squared. Let's take a look. Negative 4 times negative 10 would then be positive 40, because that would be similar to our fourth example. And just to recap this, obviously that's positive, and then a negative times a negative is a positive. Therefore, if you have one negative, you do in fact have a negative answer. They were both negative 12. So here you have a negative times a negative, that's positive. Here, the next one, you have negative 2 times negative 5 times negative 7. Well, if you do the product of the first two, you get positive 10. Then a positive times a negative is in fact negative, so therefore negative 70. Another way to do this is to just simply do 2 times 5 times 7, regardless of the signs, call it 70, and then count the number of negatives, which is an odd number, and therefore we will have a negative answer, because any two multiplied together become positive, leaving you with that extra negative left over. And likewise, if you have an even number of negatives, we will end up with a positive solution there. That's why here in the first step, all I did was change the negative 4 to a fraction. And then, of course, in the very next step, I'm just working with all positive. But I basically just erased all the negatives and just used positive numbers there. And then, of course, 4 times 3/4 is just 3, so that's why I put 3 over 1. Then I'm going to multiply these two, 3/8, and then times 3, so therefore 9/8. You just multiply straight across, and we're all set. Next one, negative 3 quantity squared means, now in this case, your exponent is responsible for the 3 and the negative. That's why we have negative 3 times negative 3, which is positive 9. Then, of course, here the square is only responsible for the 3. That's why we have 2 3's and a negative. This you have 2 negative 3's. Here you have 2 3's with a negative in front. Therefore, negative 9. And there you have it. We'll see you in the next one.